I missed my dream job to help a stranger, only to realize she was the millionaire's daughter. The morning sun was bright but gentle, glinting off the pavement as he hurried along the quiet suburban road. His mind raced through the details of the job interview he was already running late for. Folder in hand, tie slightly askew, coffee cooling in the cup holder. Life had been a delicate balancing act since becoming a single dad. Long hours, small paychecks, and endless responsibility. But today felt particularly critical. Then he saw her, a young woman crouched beside a sleek car, hands fumbling with the jack, her expression a mix of frustration and worry. She cursed softly under her breath as the tire wobbled precariously. Something instinctive pulled him to stop. He knew the cost, he'd be even later, but the thought of leaving someone stranded felt impossible. He stepped onto the gravel beside her, feeling the coarse texture under his boots, and knelt down. The faint scent of her perfume mingled with the tang of asphalt and motor oil, and for a moment, the world narrowed to this small, tense bubble. "Need a hand?" he asked, keeping his tone casual but steady. She looked up, startled, and then a soft, grateful smile broke across her face. Her eyes were sharp yet gentle, revealing a quiet confidence, tempered with vulnerability. I think I can manage," she said hesitantly, though her hands faltered on the tire. He shrugged, already sliding the wrench into place. "It'll go faster with two." As they worked side by side, there was a rhythm in the quiet. The scrape of metal, the click of the wrench, the soft brush of her fingers against his as she handed him the tire iron. That brief contact, almost accidental, sent an unexpected warmth up his arm, a fleeting spark of connection. He caught the way the sunlight kissed her hair, amber highlights glowing like embers, and his chest tightened with an inexplicable familiarity, a feeling that tugged at memories he didn't yet place. She shifted slightly to adjust the jack, and their shoulders brushed. He froze for an instant, aware of the electricity in the contact, then laughed lightly to mask his awareness. She smiled, a little awkward, and glanced away, the corners of her mouth betraying a hint of shared amusement. The air was filled with small, grounding details. The coarse gravel under his knees, the warmth of the sun on his back, the faint scent of tire rubber mixing with her perfume. He noticed the way she flexed her fingers, the subtle tilt of her head when she concentrated, the softness of her voice when she spoke. A voice that seemed to linger even after the words faded. By the time the tire was secure, he realized he was late. More than late, but the satisfaction in helping someone in need outweighed any frustration. She leaned slightly forward, brushing her hair behind her ear, and their eyes met again. In that silent exchange, there was gratitude, recognition, and the faintest spark of something neither fully understood yet. He stepped back, wiping his hands, feeling the grit of gravel cling to his palms, and she straightened, brushing off her jeans. "Thank you, really?" she said softly, her eyes holding his just a moment longer than expected, and in that fleeting connection, amidst grease, sunlight, and the soft warmth of shared human kindness, a story began, one neither of them could have anticipated. By the time the last lug nut clicked into place, he glanced at his watch and his stomach sank. The interview was long past the scheduled hour. His chest tightened as he pictured the sleek office building, the receptionist's polite but firm shake of the head, and the professional opportunity slipping through his fingers. Every fiber of his body urged him to run, to leave, to chase the career that could secure a better life for his child. Yet, as he turned back to the woman who had just managed to get her car rolling, he felt a quiet satisfaction. The way she smiled, brushing her hair back from her face with a faint blush, carried gratitude that couldn't be measured in paychecks or job titles. Her soft voice broke the tension. "Thanks. I don't know what I would have done without you," she said. He forced a small smile, brushing his hands on his jeans, the faint grit of gravel and motor oil clinging stubbornly. "It was nothing. Just glad you're safe." The irony wasn't lost on him. He had sacrificed a professional milestone for a stranger. But in the pause between them, in the way her eyes lingered on his, he felt a warmth he hadn't expected. a quiet acknowledgement that what he'd done mattered, even if no one else would know. As she slid into the driver's seat, her fingers brushing his briefly as she passed him the keys, a spark traveled up his arm. It was fleeting, accidental, but it left him momentarily breathless. That single, innocent touch held weight far beyond its simplicity. He noticed the sunlight catching the subtle highlights in her hair, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the afternoon air. It was almost surreal, this brief intersection of lives, punctuated by chance, yet tinged with something that felt strangely significant. He stepped back, brushing gravel from his knees, and took a deep breath. The air felt heavier now, loaded with both loss and an inexplicable anticipation. He knew he'd be late, knew the receptionist would frown, knew the opportunity might be gone forever, but he couldn't regret his choice. The faint tug of connection in her eyes, the gratitude in her voice, was already more rewarding than any professional triumph could be in that moment. His mind raced with conflicting emotions as she drove off, the engines fading down the quiet road. Anger, frustration, and worry about his child's needs mingled with an unusual, restless curiosity about her. Who was she really? Why had helping her felt so important? He couldn't shake the memory of the soft touch of her fingers, the brief, meaningful glances, the subtle vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. Even as he hurried toward his ruined interview, the tension in his chest was not just from lost opportunity. There was something else, an unspoken pull, a curiosity about this stranger whose presence had altered the trajectory of his day. And deep down, he sensed that this fleeting encounter, accidental and inconvenient as it was, might mark the beginning of something neither of them yet understood. For a moment, he paused on the sidewalk, letting the sounds of distant traffic and birdsong wash over him. The world felt both heavy and alive, and he realized that sometimes doing the right thing came at a cost. But the unexpected reward might be far greater than any job, paycheck, or promotion. The street was quieter now, the hum of traffic fading as he trudged toward the building where his interview had been scheduled. Yet, even with the missed opportunity looming heavily in his mind, he couldn't stop replaying the encounter. Every detail of her lingered, her soft voice, the precise movements of her hands as she helped steady the tire, the faint amber glow in her hair from the late morning sun. Their paths hadn't crossed beyond that brief act of kindness, yet the memory of her eyes haunted him. They had held a quiet intensity, like a window into a world he had only glimpsed through fleeting moments of familiarity. He realized he hadn't asked her name, and the thought left a subtle ache in his chest, a curiosity that refused to fade. Later that evening, as he settled into the worn armchair in his living room, coffee cooling on the side table, he ran through the scene in his mind. He could still feel the brush of her fingers when she handed him the lug wrench, the warmth of her hand against his palm. Small details, the tilt of her head when she concentrated, the faint laugh that slipped out when he made a small joke, were now vivid memories that carried weight far beyond their fleeting interaction. He pictured her again as she had straightened beside her car, the sun catching the highlights in her hair and casting a glow that seemed almost cinematic. Her smile had been brief, polite, but in that moment, it had held gratitude, vulnerability, and a hint of something unspoken, a connection that neither of them fully recognized yet. Even as he wrestled with his disappointment over the lost job, a quiet curiosity began to grow. Who was she, really? Why had helping her felt so compelling, so undeniably? Right? There was something magnetic about her presence, a pull that lingered in his chest, reminding him that life was full of unexpected intersections. He found himself replaying the small gestures over and over, the way she leaned forward slightly, brushing her hair from her face, the way her fingers flexed nervously as she steadied the jack, the way her eyes softened when their shoulders accidentally brushed. Each memory carried an electric weight, a subtle intimacy that had passed almost unnoticed in the moment but now resonated deeply. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. Some unspoken understanding had passed between them, a fleeting acknowledgement that their lives had briefly touched in a meaningful way. And as he sipped his coffee, he realized that even though he had been late, Even though the opportunity he had been chasing had slipped away, this encounter was a gift of a different kind. One that promised the possibility of something far more significant than any job. For the first time that day, he allowed himself to pause and feel it. The flutter of anticipation, the quiet pull of curiosity, and the lingering warmth of a stranger's gratitude and presence. The encounter had been brief, inconvenient, and costly, but it had also opened a door to a connection he could no longer ignore. And somewhere deep in the recesses of his mind, a thought took root, stubborn and insistent. He wanted to see her again. Back in his modest apartment, the hum of the evening city seeped through the window. The day's stress lingered. Missed interview, unpaid bills, the constant pull of responsibility. But despite it all, his mind refused to let go of her. The way she had crouched beside her car, focused yet vulnerable, kept replaying in vivid flashes, like sunlight spilling over gravel. He sank into his worn armchair, cradling his coffee cup, and allowed himself a quiet sigh. Even the faint aroma of the brew mingled with the memory of her perfume, a delicate floral scent that now seemed intertwined with the faint tang of motor oil and asphalt. He caught himself smiling at the thought, the warmth spreading through his chest despite the lingering frustration of the lost opportunity. It wasn't just her beauty. It was the way she moved, poised yet unguarded, confident yet quietly unsure in that moment of need. He remembered the tilt of her head, the soft sound of her voice, and the subtle brushing of her fingers when they had passed tools back and forth. Each detail was etched in his mind, small and fleeting at the time, now carrying an unexpected weight. Later, while helping his child with homework, he found his attention drifting. A pencil rolled across the floor, and he picked it up, but the image of her smile lingered in his vision. He recalled the way her eyes had held gratitude, the momentary connection of their shoulders brushing as they worked together. Even the briefest, most casual touches had lingered in his memory, leaving a warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill of disappointment over the missed interview. That night, as he prepared dinner, he caught himself glancing at the clock and imagining her day. Did she make it to her destination safely? Was she already back in her polished, privileged world, oblivious to the impact their encounter had left on him? The thought brought both a pang of longing and a quiet smile. The universe had forced their paths to cross, if only for a few minutes, and the memory was enough to keep his spirits buoyed amidst the ordinary struggles of life. Even small, mundane moments, the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of dishes, the soft laughter of his child, felt imbued with a sense of anticipation. He found himself replaying the brush of her hand, the soft, almost hesitant glances, the gentle curve of her lips when she had smiled at him. These flashes of intimacy had been so fleeting, yet they resonated more profoundly than he expected, weaving themselves into his thoughts like a subtle, persistent melody. By the time he finally lay down that night, exhaustion tugging at his limbs, he realized the encounter had done more than cost him a job. It had awakened something unexpected, curiosity, warmth, and a sense of connection that neither circumstance nor social status could erase. And as he closed his eyes, the lingering thought remained. He wanted to see her again, to discover who she truly was beyond that brief, sunlit encounter, and perhaps to explore the quiet pull of something that might be far more meaningful than any career milestone. The following morning, he walked into the office, head down, the lingering frustration of yesterday's missed opportunity weighing on his shoulders. Papers shuffled, phones rang, and the faint aroma of coffee filled the air, but his mind was elsewhere. He was mentally retracing the encounter on the road, the way her fingers had brushed his hand, the warmth of her glance, the subtle tilt of her head. Then, unexpectedly, he was pulled back into reality. A colleague leaned toward him, a mix of curiosity and amusement on their face. "Did you hear? The CEO's daughter was stranded yesterday near the outskirts? The one with the luxury car." Something inside him shifted, his chest tightened, pulse quickening. He replayed every detail. The sleek car, the soft perfume mingling with motor oil, the gentle but confident movements of the woman he had helped. His hands, still slightly rough from work, clenched briefly at his sides. Could it really be the same girl? The truth struck him like a jolt of electricity. The woman he had delayed himself to help, the stranger whose hand had brushed against his, whose smile had lingered in his mind, was the very daughter of the millionaire CEO. The irony was almost unbearable. The very job he had missed for kindness, the career opportunity he had sacrificed, was tied directly to the world she inhabited. He leaned against his desk, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Every detail of their encounter, the gravel under his knees, the soft sunlight catching her hair, the faint amber highlights, the warmth of her touch, suddenly seemed charged with new significance. Their brief connection was no longer just a moment of kindness. It carried a weight he hadn't anticipated, bridging two worlds that were now painfully intertwined. Later that afternoon, she appeared at the office for a meeting with her father. He watched from across the room, his heart a mixture of awe, apprehension, and something tender that he couldn't quite name. She moved with the same grace he had remembered, confidence in her stride softened by subtle traces of vulnerability. When her eyes caught his across the room, there was a flicker of recognition, just enough to make his stomach flutter. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The hum of office chatter faded. All he could see was her, the woman he had helped, whose world he had inadvertently disrupted, and who now carried the power to influence the very job he had lost. Yet beneath the tension, there was something else, a fragile connection, an unspoken acknowledgement that yesterday's moment had mattered. He took a steadying breath, aware of the tight knot of anticipation and fear in his chest. The universe had a peculiar sense of irony, he thought. Kindness had cost him a career milestone, but it had also brought him face to face with someone extraordinary, someone whose presence stirred memories, longing, and a silent, unexpected hope. As she walked past him, her fingers brushing the edge of his desk in a fleeting, almost accidental touch, he felt a warmth bloom in his chest. The revelation had transformed their encounter from a simple act of help into a collision of worlds, and the tension between them was just beginning. A few days after the revelation, they found themselves in the quiet corner of a small cafe, tucked away from the hum of the city. The air was warm with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sweet pastries, mingling with the faint scent of her perfume. The outside world seemed to fade as they settled into their seats across from each other. A delicate space filled with curiosity, unspoken questions, and the lingering warmth of memory. He noticed how her posture softened in the familiar yet charged presence of someone who had once mattered deeply. Her hands moved unconsciously, brushing the rim of her cup or tracing the edge of the table, gestures that revealed vulnerability beneath the polished exterior of the millionaire's daughter. When she spoke, her voice carried a gentle tone, revealing honesty and subtle hesitation. "I've been thinking about that day," she admitted softly, eyes briefly dropping to her hands. You didn't have to stop for me. Most people would have just driven on." He shook his head, the corners of his mouth lifting in a wry, reflective smile. "It felt like the right thing to do, even if it cost me a lot." He gestured slightly toward the missed interview, the words lingering in the air, heavy with both frustration and quiet pride. They shared a small laugh, a moment of lightness that seemed to bridge the gap between their worlds. His hands rested loosely on the table, fingers occasionally brushing hers when reaching for sugar or a napkin. Each accidental contact carried warmth, a subtle intimacy that neither needed to acknowledge aloud but both felt deeply. As the conversation unfolded, they began to share pieces of their lives. The pressures he faced as a single dad, the delicate balancing of work and parenting, and the moments of quiet joy that made it all worthwhile. She spoke of her own struggles, the weight of expectation, the isolation behind the polished veneer of privilege, and the longing for moments that felt real and unforced. The subtle rhythm of shared vulnerability began to form a bridge between them. Her eyes softened as he described his child, her hand brushing his lightly when she laughed at an anecdote, and he felt a stirring of something more profound than attraction: trust. For the first time since their encounter, the contrast of their worlds didn't feel like a barrier but a backdrop against which a connection could grow. They leaned slightly closer across the small table, shoulders occasionally brushing, a fleeting warmth that was electric in its subtlety. The cafe was quiet enough to hear the soft hum of their conversation, punctuated by the distant clatter of cups and muted chatter, grounding them in the present while memories of the past lingered gently. By the time they parted, the tension had softened into something rich and promising. A slow, steady recognition of compatibility, respect, and unspoken desire. A brief brush of hands on the way out, a lingering look as she walked away, and the soft exhale of anticipation left him feeling both grounded and alive. For the first time, he realized that the cost of a missed job was insignificant compared to the emotional connection he was beginning to build. Their worlds had collided, yet here, amidst quiet conversation, laughter, and tender glances, something real, something slow-burning and enduring, had begun to take root. The weekend brought a calmness that contrasted sharply with the hectic pace of their daily lives. The air carried a crisp, late-afternoon breeze, tinged with the faint scent of blooming flowers from the nearby park. He was walking home from work when he spotted her waiting near the corner, leaning casually against a lamp post, her hair catching the golden light in delicate highlights. His chest tightened, not with anxiety, but with a familiar warmth he hadn't realized had been missing. As he approached, she straightened, a soft smile playing on her lips. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply existed in the shared space, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey that had brought them here. The air between them felt charged yet comforting, a mix of familiarity and newness. "You made it," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. "I wouldn't miss this," he replied, his voice low but steady. The simple words carried weight. They weren't just about showing up, but about choosing to be present in this new chapter of their lives. They walked together toward the park, the rhythmic tapping of his boots on the pavement blending with the distant laughter of children playing. Her hand brushed against his accidentally, or so it seemed, but neither recoiled. Instead, a subtle heat passed between them, the unspoken acknowledgement of intimacy growing with each step. At the park, his child ran ahead, laughing, and she crouched to meet them, arms opening in a gentle, nurturing gesture. The child wrapped small arms around her waist, and she rested her cheek lightly against theirs, radiating warmth and care. He watched, heart swelling with gratitude and quiet awe. This was no longer just a brief encounter on the roadside. It was becoming something tangible, real, and life-affirming. They settled on a bench beneath a sprawling oak, sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. She shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing his, and he felt the familiar warmth of her presence against him. The conversation flowed easily, laughter mingling with moments of reflective silence. No words were needed to convey the mutual recognition. The lost job, the unexpected connection, the subtle tension of age gap attraction. All had led to this. When he finally reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, light but deliberate, a silent promise of trust, respect, and growing affection. Her thumb brushed the back of his hand, sending a comforting warmth up his arm. For a heartbeat, he felt a sense of completeness that no professional success could match. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they rose and walked home together. The child skipped between them, laughter echoing softly, while they exchanged glances, smiles lingering, and hands brushing. Every step, every subtle gesture, carried the weight of unspoken feelings made tangible. By the time they reached home, it was clear. The worlds they had come from, different, complex, and challenging, had aligned not through coincidence but through the quiet, steady pull of kindness, respect, and connection. They had discovered that love could bloom slowly, deliberately, and beautifully, and that even a missed opportunity could lead to the most profound of rewards. If you enjoyed this slow-burn love story, hit the like button and subscribe for more heartwarming tales of unexpected romance. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if a small act of kindness changed your life forever?